What if the greatest mistake we ever made about human history was believing it moved in a straight line? Stop. Because across the world, archaeologists have uncovered objects that appear in places and times where they should not exist. A footprint shaped like a Roman sandal, sealed inside rock millions of years old. A mechanical device capable of calculating celestial movements, built long before complex machinery was thought possible. A perfectly drilled stone bracelet, crafted 40,000 years ago by a human species once dismissed as primitive. Each discovery has been studied. Each one is real, and each one quietly contradicts what we think we know. If these were isolated errors, they could be ignored, but when they are placed together, they expose a question science has yet to answer. Are we missing an entire chapter of our own past? Modern history is built on a simple assumption: progress moves forward in a straight line. Stone tools lead to bronze. Bronze leads to iron. Primitive minds give way to advanced civilizations, and advanced civilizations give birth to technology. This linear model has shaped how textbooks are written, how museums are organized, and how entire civilizations are ranked. Anything that does not fit is labeled an anomaly, an error, a coincidence, or at worst, a myth. But archaeology does not operate on belief. It operates on layers of earth, on carbon decay, on stone that remembers pressure and time without bias. And in those layers, researchers have found things that do not belong. Not legends. Not symbolic art. But physical objects embedded, fused, engineered, that appear far earlier than the knowledge required to create them. Some challenge technology. Others challenge mathematics, medicine, or engineering. And a few challenge the very timeline of human existence itself. In response, science has done what it always does when faced with discomfort. It isolates each case. It avoids connecting the dots. Because the moment these discoveries are viewed together, a far more unsettling picture begins to emerge. One where advanced knowledge may have appeared, vanished, and reappeared more than once. One where civilizations could rise high and fall so completely that only fragments survive. One where primitive may simply mean forgotten. This is not a story about aliens, fantasy, or speculation. Every discovery you are about to hear has been cataloged, studied, and debated by serious researchers. Yet none of them has a fully accepted explanation. What follows are 10 real archaeological discoveries. Each one documented. Each one verified. And each one forcing us to confront the same uncomfortable possibility. Human history may be far older, far stranger, and far less linear than we were ever taught. 1. The Roman footprint that broke geology. The problem with footprints is that they are honest. They do not exaggerate. They do not tell stories. They simply record a moment when something passed through soft ground and pressed reality into place. That is why this discovery is so disturbing. Embedded within a layer of solid stone, rock dated to millions of years old, archaeologists uncovered what appeared to be a footprint, not an abstract shape, not erosion, but a clear negative impression of a foot wearing a sandal. But even more unsettling, within the same geological layer, researchers found a small iron object fused directly into the stone. At first glance, it looked unremarkable, just a corroded piece of metal. Until experts recognized it. It matched the exact design of a Roman shoe nail, the kind used by soldiers over 2,000 years ago to reinforce leather sandals. The nail was not loose. It had not fallen into a crack. It was not inserted later. It was locked inside the rock itself, as if the stone had formed around it. Geologists re-examined the surrounding strata. The layer was ancient, undisturbed. There were no signs of intrusion, no fractures, no evidence of contamination. Historians reviewed alternative explanations: misidentification, hoax, modern debris. None fit the evidence. Because geology does not care about human assumptions. Stone forms slowly under pressure across timescales that dwarf civilizations. If the rock is truly millions of years old, then the object inside it cannot be modern. And if the object is human-made, then humans, or something like them, were present far earlier than our timeline allows them. Some researchers proposed extremely rare geological processes that might pull younger objects into older layers, but none could explain the precision of the footprint or the way the nail was fused without distortion at Guillaume's. Others quietly suggested something more radical, that an unknown civilization may have existed long before recorded history, one erased so completely that only accidental traces remain. And then there is the explanation no one wants to discuss, that the footprint may not belong to the past at all. That it could be evidence of movement across time, a single step, taken where and when it should never have been possible. There is no official conclusion. The artifact remains real. The footprint remains unexplained. And the stone remains older than humanity itself. If this is the first crack in the timeline, what happens when we keep looking? 2. Nan Madol, the city that should not stand. Deep in the western Pacific, on the island of Pohnpei in Micronesia, lies a place that feels fundamentally out of place, not because it is hidden, but because it exists at all. Nan Madol is a vast city built not on solid ground, but across a mangrove swamp. It is composed of nearly 100 artificial islands, all connected by narrow canals, forming what some have called the Venice of the Pacific. But this comparison fails to capture the scale of the problem. The city is constructed almost entirely from basalt columns, natural stone pillars formed by volcanic activity. Many of these columns weigh tens of tons. Some exceed 100 tons. And here is where the timeline begins to fracture. The culture credited with building Nan Madol had no wheels, no metal tools, no cranes, no pulleys, no draft animals capable of moving such weight. Yet somehow, these stones were quarried miles away, transported across open water, and stacked with extraordinary precision. The walls interlock like engineered systems, distributing weight evenly and resisting seismic activity in a region prone to earthquakes. Modern engineers have studied the site and reached an uncomfortable conclusion. Even with today's machinery, moving and placing stones of this size in such an environment would be a monumental challenge. Archaeologists searched for evidence of how it was done: roads, ramps, tool marks, temporary structures. They found nothing. No construction debris, no failed experiments, no clear signs of incremental building. Just the finished result, cold, deliberate, and silent. Local oral histories offer an explanation that science quickly dismisses. They speak of sorcerers who commanded stones to fly, of forces that lifted the basalt through the air and placed it where it was needed. These stories are labeled myth, but they persist for a reason. Because standing before Nan Madol, it is difficult to believe that human muscle alone was responsible. Even more unsettling is the city's layout. Nan Madol does not feel residential. There is little evidence of daily life, no marketplaces, no dense living quarters. Instead, the design suggests something ceremonial, administrative, perhaps even ritualistic. As if this was not a city built for people, but a place built by people, for a purpose we no longer understand. If ancient societies truly lacked the technology to build Nan Madol, then the city should not exist. Yet it does. And like the footprint locked in ancient stone, it stands as a physical contradiction, challenging not just how the past was built, but who we believe built it. 3. The vitrified forts of Scotland. Across the rugged highlands of Scotland, there are ruins that at first appear unremarkable: low stone walls, broken enclosures, remnants of hill forts built by ancient tribes thousands of years ago. But a closer look reveals something deeply unsettling. The stones are not merely stacked, they are melted together. In dozens of locations, archaeologists have found fortifications where entire walls appear fused into glass-like masses, twisted, warped, and solidified as if once liquefied. This phenomenon is known as vitrification, and it should not be possible. To melt granite or sandstone into a glassy state requires temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius. That is hotter than most volcanic lava, far beyond anything achievable with Iron Age fire technology. Yet here it is. Not in one isolated structure, but in fort after fort, spread across vast regions of Scotland. Early researchers suggested lightning strikes, but lightning does not melt entire walls uniformly. Others proposed massive fires fueled by timber, but experimental archaeology has shown that even enormous wood fires cannot reach or sustain the temperatures required to vitrify stone on this scale. The problem grows worse when examining the extent of the damage. Some forts show partial vitrification, others appear fused from end to end, as if swept by a wave of intense heat that moved deliberately across the structure. This does not look like accidental destruction. It looks like exposure. Exposure to an energy source we cannot identify. Local legends speak of ancient battles fought with fire from the sky, weapons so bright they turned night into day. Stories passed down as myth because there is no historical framework to support them. But myths often form around events that defy understanding. What troubles researchers most is not the melted stone itself, but the absence of explanation. There is no evidence of advanced furnaces, no residue of fuel, no signs of controlled industrial processes. Only stone that once flowed like liquid. If these forts were destroyed intentionally, the method used has vanished completely. If they were subjected to a natural event, it was one so rare that it left no modern parallel. Either way, the vitrified forts do not fit into the technological capabilities assigned to the people who built them. They stand as frozen evidence of an encounter with heat powerful enough to reshape architecture, and powerful enough to erase the method behind it. If ancient people could melt stone, what else might they have been capable of? 4. The Denisovan bracelet that rewrote human prehistory. Deep within Denisova Cave in Siberia, archaeologists expected to find what they had always found before: stone tools, bone fragments, simple remnants of early human life. What they did not expect was a bracelet. Not a crude ornament, not a roughly shaped stone ring, but a finely crafted band made from polished green chlorite, smooth, symmetrical, and unmistakably deliberate. The bracelet was dated to approximately 40,000 years ago. At that time, human technology was assumed to be simple, functional, far removed from precision craftsmanship. Yet under microscopic examination, the bracelet told a different story. Its surface was evenly polished, suggesting controlled abrasion techniques. Its symmetry was nearly perfect. Most unsettling of all, the bracelet contained a drilled hole. Not a chipped opening, not a fractured cavity. A precise circular bore. When researchers analyzed the markings inside the hole, they identified spiral scoring, the exact pattern left by a high-speed rotary drill. This kind of drilling should not appear until the industrial age, tens of thousands of years later. The stone itself raised further questions. Green chlorite does not occur naturally near Denisova Cave. Whoever made the bracelet had to transport the material over long distances, implying trade networks, planning, and social organization. Then came the discovery that truly shattered expectations. The bracelet was not made by Homo sapiens. It was not crafted by Neanderthals. Genetic evidence revealed its creators were Denisovans, an extinct human species known primarily from a handful of bone fragments, some. For decades, Denisovans were described as primitive, technologically inferior, barely distinguishable from their environment. This single artifact demolished that assumption. If Denisovans could produce an object of this complexity, they possessed not only dexterity, but advanced knowledge of materials, tools, and design. And if such knowledge existed, it raises an uncomfortable question. What else did they create that did not survive? Organic materials decay, wood rots, fibers vanish. Perhaps this bracelet is not an anomaly, but a survivor. A rare fragment of a technological tradition erased by time, climate, and extinction. If an extinct human species could achieve this level of sophistication 40,000 years ago, then the story of human intelligence is not a straight line. It is a shattered mosaic, missing most of its pieces. 5. Plimpton, 322, the mathematics that appeared too soon. Among the thousands of clay tablets recovered from ancient Mesopotamia, most are routine: records of crops, trade agreements, lists of goods and taxes. But one small tablet, catalogued as Plimpton 322, refused to stay ordinary. At first glance, it appears unremarkable. Rows of numbers pressed into clay nearly 4,000 years ago. No diagrams, no explanations. Just columns of carefully arranged symbols written in the Babylonian base 60 system. For decades, historians struggled to interpret its purpose. Then mathematicians took a closer look. What they discovered was startling. Plimpton 322 is not a list. It is not an accounting record. It is a trigonometric table, astil. Long before Greek mathematicians formalized trigonometry, the Babylonians were already using a system capable of calculating right triangles with extraordinary precision. Not approximations, not rough estimates, exact values. And modern analysis revealed that the relationships encoded on the tablet align perfectly with advanced trigonometric principles that were thought to be invented more than 1,000 years later. Even more unsettling, the Babylonian method may have been more accurate than the Greek system that eventually replaced it. By avoiding angles and working directly with ratios, their calculations eliminated many sources of error. This was mathematics built for application. Architecture, land surveying, astronomical observation. Yet there is a glaring absence surrounding the tablet. No accompanying texts explain the theory behind it. No schools are recorded as teaching it. No progression documents how this knowledge developed. The tablet appears fully formed, as if dropped into history without context. Historians are left with an uncomfortable implication. If Babylonian scholars possessed this level of mathematical sophistication, then their intellectual world was far richer than what survived. Libraries burned, cities collapsed, knowledge vanished faster than stone. What troubles researchers is not that ancient people were intelligent. That much is undeniable. It is that such a powerful mathematical framework could emerge, function, and then disappear almost entirely, leaving behind only a single surviving artifact. Plimpton 322 does not just challenge the timeline of mathematics. It challenges the assumption that knowledge once discovered inevitably moves forward. Sometimes it moves backward, sometimes it is erased. And sometimes all that remains is a clay tablet, quietly proving that the past knew more than we remember. 6. The Antikythera mechanism, a machine lost to time. In 1901, sponge divers exploring a shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera recovered a collection of corroded bronze fragments. At first, they appeared to be nothing more than debris, twisted metal pulled from the seafloor. But as conservators began cleaning the pieces, something impossible emerged. Hidden inside the corrosion were gears. Not decorative shapes, not symbolic patterns. Interlocking bronze gears, precisely cut, deliberately arranged, and unmistakably mechanical. Further analysis revealed that the fragments were part of a single device, built around more than 30 meshing gears, some no larger than a coin. The shipwreck was dated to around 100 BCE. What followed shocked historians and engineers alike. The Antikythera mechanism was not a clock. It was not a navigational aid. It was a computational machine. By turning a hand crank, the device could predict the positions of the sun and moon, track lunar phases, and even forecast eclipses decades into the future. Some reconstructions suggest it modeled the motions of known planets with remarkable accuracy. Nothing like it should have existed in the ancient world. Comparable mechanical complexity does not reappear in history until medieval astronomical clocks more than 1,500 years later. There are no earlier prototypes, no later descendants. The Antikythera mechanism appears fully realized, then vanishes. This absence is what troubles researchers most. Complex machines do not emerge in isolation. They require skilled craftsmen, mathematical theory, and a tradition of experimentation. Yet no texts describe such devices. No workshops have been found. No broken attempts litter the archaeological record. It is as if an entire technological lineage was erased. Some scholars believe the mechanism represents a lost branch of Hellenistic science, knowledge that flourished briefly before being extinguished by war, political collapse, and cultural upheaval. Others argue that this level of engineering suggests far more widespread expertise than a single object implies. Because no one builds a machine like this by accident, the Antikythera mechanism forces a difficult question. How many advanced ideas were discovered in the ancient world, only to be lost before they could reshape history? If one machine capable of modeling the cosmos could disappear without trace, what else might have vanished with it? 7. The Piri Reis Map. Knowledge from an unknown source. In 1513, an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis compiled a world map unlike any other of its time. Drawn on gazelle skin, the map depicts parts of Europe, Africa, and the Americas with a level of accuracy that should not have been possible in the early 16th century. At first, historians assumed it was simply a product of emerging age of exploration knowledge. Then they looked closer. The coastlines of South America are rendered with striking precision, not approximate shapes, not speculative outlines, but proportions that align closely with modern maps. Even more puzzling, portions of the map appear to show land masses that were officially discovered centuries later. Most controversial of all is the suggestion, still debated, that it may depict a section of Antarctica without its ice cover. Piri Reis himself provided a clue to the mystery. In notes written directly on the map, he stated that it was not an original creation. It was a compilation, assembled from much older source maps, some of which he claimed dated back to the time of Alexander the Great. This raises an immediate problem. To map coastlines accurately, one needs extensive exploration, standardized measurement, and reliable navigation. Longitude, in particular, is extremely difficult to calculate without advanced instruments. Yet the cultures credited with these supposed source maps should not have possessed such capabilities. If the Piri Reis map is accurate, and parts of it demonstrably are, then its underlying data came from a level of geographic knowledge that predates modern cartography by centuries, if not millennia. Critics argue coincidence, distortion, or selective interpretation, but even skeptics admit something unusual is at work. The map does not behave like a guess. It behaves like a copy of something older. And if ancient civilizations truly possessed global geographic knowledge, then the history of exploration may not begin with ships crossing unknown seas, but with forgotten archives quietly passing information forward through time. The Piri Reis map does not tell us who created its sources. It only tells us that someone, somewhere, once knew far more about the world than they should have. And that knowledge survived, just barely. 8. The Baghdad Battery, electricity before its time. In the 1930s, archaeologists excavating near modern-day Baghdad uncovered a small clay jar that appeared unremarkable at first. It was roughly 15 centimeters tall. No inscriptions, no decoration. But inside the jar was something unexpected. A copper cylinder, a thin iron rod, and traces of an acidic substance. Individually, these components meant little. Together, they formed something disturbingly familiar. When modern researchers reconstructed the object and filled it with a mild acid, such as vinegar or wine, it produced an electric charge. Low voltage, but real electricity. The artifact became known as the Baghdad Battery, dated to nearly 2,000 years ago, within the Parthian or early Sasanian period. This immediately created a problem. According to accepted history, electricity was not understood, generated, or applied until the modern era. Yet here was a device that functioned exactly like a primitive electrochemical cell. Skeptics suggested alternative uses. Perhaps the jar was for storing scrolls. Perhaps it held religious objects. But none of these explanations accounted for the specific combination of materials or the fact that when assembled correctly, the device consistently generated voltage. So the question shifted. If ancient people were producing electricity, what were they using it for? One possibility is metal plating. Electroplating can be achieved with low voltage, and some ancient artifacts display unusually even metallic coatings that are difficult to explain through known chemical methods. Another theory suggests ritual or medical use. Electric sensations often carry symbolic or healing significance in early cultures. But there is no surviving documentation. No text describing electrical practice, no diagrams, no continuity of knowledge. Once again, the pattern repeats. A technology appears fully formed, it functions, and then it disappears. If the Baghdad battery truly was an electrical device, it implies that experimentation with energy occurred long before science was formalized, that ancient minds were not merely observing nature, but interacting with it in ways we no longer remember. And if electricity could be discovered, used, and forgotten once before, what does that say about how fragile technological knowledge really is? 9. Trepanation, surgery before modern medicine. Long before hospitals, anesthesia, or sterile operating rooms, ancient humans were cutting into the skull. Archaeologists across Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Americas have uncovered human skulls dating back 10,000 years or more, each bearing a circular hole deliberately carved into the bone. This practice is known as trepanation. At first, researchers assumed these holes were signs of violence, battle wounds, execution marks, but closer examination told a very different story. The edges of many skull openings show clear signs of bone regrowth. The individuals survived the procedure, sometimes for years afterward. This means ancient surgeons were not only opening the skull, but doing so with enough precision to avoid fatal damage to the brain, blood vessels, and protective membranes. They were performing surgery. Without metal scalpels, without antiseptics, without pain management as we understand it. The tools used were often stone blades, obsidian flakes, or sharpened bone, materials capable of extreme sharpness but requiring remarkable control. Even more puzzling is the consistency. Trepanation appears in cultures separated by vast distances and time periods, yet the technique is strikingly similar. The same circular forms, the same careful scraping rather than violent cutting. Why perform such a dangerous operation? Some theories suggest it was used to relieve head trauma, reducing pressure after injury. Others propose spiritual reasons, such as releasing evil spirits or treating mental illness. Whatever the motivation, the outcome is undeniable. Ancient practitioners understood the human skull well enough to open it and close it without killing the patient. Modern neurosurgery recognizes trepanation as one of the most dangerous medical procedures, even with advanced tools. That prehistoric societies could achieve survival rates that rival early modern surgery forces a reconsideration of their medical knowledge. This was not random experimentation. It was practiced, refined, taught, and then, like so many other ancient skills, it faded. If complex surgery could exist in the deep past, what other medical knowledge might have been lost simply because it was never written down? 10. The Costa Rica stone spheres, perfect shapes, unknown purpose. Scattered across the jungles and river deltas of Costa Rica are objects that appear almost unnatural at first sight. Hundreds of massive stone spheres, some no larger than a melon, others weighing up to 15 tons, lying partially buried in the earth. What makes them extraordinary is not their size. It is their shape. These spheres are nearly perfect, so precise that even with modern measuring tools, deviations from true roundness are often minimal. They were carved from hard igneous rock, a material notoriously difficult to shape even with metal tools. Yet many of these spheres were produced centuries ago, between 600 and 1500 CE, by a culture that left behind no written records. No quarries have been definitively identified. No tools capable of producing such precision have been found. No clear explanation exists for how the final spherical form was achieved. And then there is the question of why. The spheres appear in deliberate groupings. Some were aligned in straight lines. Others form geometric patterns that suggest intentional placement rather than random distribution. Several researchers have proposed astronomical alignment, markers connected to solstices or celestial events. Others suggest they represented symbols of power, territorial markers, or objects tied to spiritual belief. But no interpretation has been proven. Unlike statues or temples, the stone spheres offer no obvious cultural narrative. They do not depict gods. They do not tell stories. They simply exist. And that may be what makes them so unsettling. Creating a near-perfect sphere is one of the most demanding tasks in stoneworking. It requires planning, symmetry, and an abstract understanding of geometry. This suggests the builders were not merely skilled laborers, but thinkers, people capable of visualizing perfection and executing it without modern measurement systems. Yet their purpose remains silent. No inscriptions, no oral traditions that fully explain them. Only smooth stone, shaped with intent and left behind as if waiting to be understood. The Costa Rica stone spheres do not scream mystery. They whisper it. They remind us that entire worldviews can vanish, leaving behind objects whose meaning is forever just out of reach. The history we may have lost. Taken one by one, each of these discoveries can be labeled an anomaly, a curiosity, an exception that does not threaten the larger story. That is how history protects itself. But when these discoveries are placed side by side, a different pattern emerges. A footprint where no humans should have walked, a city built where engineering should have failed, stone melted by heat no ancient fire should have produced, mathematics, machines, medicine, and craftsmanship appearing far earlier than expected, then vanishing without a trace. This is not evidence of a single forgotten empire, nor proof of a lost golden age neatly erased from records. It is something more subtle and more disturbing. It suggests that human progress is fragile, that knowledge can rise, peak, and disappear completely, that civilizations do not always pass their greatest achievements forward. Libraries burn, languages die, skills are forgotten when the people who hold them vanish. History as we know it may not be a continuous ascent, but a landscape marked by collapses we barely remember. What survives is not the full story, but fragments. Artifacts without manuals, technologies without context, achievements without names. Archaeology does not tell us that the past was more advanced than the present. It tells us something far more human. That intelligence has always existed, that creativity has always surfaced, and that forgetting may be just as natural as discovery. Perhaps the greatest mistake is not assuming ancient people were incapable, but assuming we already know everything they were capable of. Because the ground beneath our feet is older than any timeline, and sometimes it remembers more than we do.